You were taught that love means giving everything, that if you're kind enough, patient enough, understanding enough, they'll finally see you, that if you're always there, available, selfless, someone will choose you, that if you carry everyone else's pain, someone will eventually carry yours. But here's the truth no one told you. Love doesn't work like that. Life doesn't work like that. And your heart is breaking because you're living a fantasy that's quietly destroying your self-worth. You didn't become invisible overnight. You erased yourself one piece at a time. You started saying yes when you wanted to scream no. You swallowed your opinions just to avoid conflict. You tolerated disrespect because you were scared of losing people who were never afraid of losing you. And now you don't even recognize the person in the mirror. You don't know if you're being kind or just terrified. Terrified of being alone. Terrified of not being enough. Terrified of becoming irrelevant. Carl Jung once said that what we do not make conscious will come back to us as fate. And your fate is becoming a silent servant to the idea of being lovable. You think this is empathy, but it's not. It's submission disguised as kindness. It's fear masquerading as virtue, because deep down you don't believe you deserve love unless you bleed for it. And the people around you, they feel it. They see the desperation in your eyes. And they walk away, not because you're not good enough, but because you're willing to disappear just to be seen. The world doesn't respond to weakness with compassion. It responds with indifference. And that's the wound you're carrying, the unbearable feeling that no matter what you do, no one truly chooses you. But what if the problem isn't them? What if the problem is how you trained the world to treat you? Every time you abandoned your needs to prioritize theirs, you taught them that your boundaries don't matter, that your silence means consent, that your kindness means weakness. And now you're furious, not just at them, but at yourself, for being so easy to ignore. Let's be honest, you've begged for love in ways you don't even want to admit. You've checked your phone 1,000 times, hoping for a message that never comes. You've reread conversations looking for signs that they cared. You've cried in silence because you didn't want to look dramatic. You've over-explained yourself, over-justified your feelings, overextended your soul, just to receive the bare minimum. And each time they pulled away, you blamed yourself. You thought maybe you weren't funny enough, attractive enough, calm enough, deep enough. But what if the very act of bending yourself into pieces is what made them lose interest in the first place? You think love means sacrificing. But sacrifice without boundaries is self-destruction. And you've been dying in slow motion, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, all while telling yourself that you're just loving deeply. No, you're not. You're addicted to the idea of being needed, because somewhere along the line, you confused being needed with being loved. And Carl Jung warned us, the shadow that we refuse to confront becomes the master of our behavior. You don't want to admit how terrified you are of rejection, how easily one cold response can shatter your day, how deeply you crave to feel special, not because you're arrogant, but because you've spent your life feeling replaceable. That's the core of the pain. You never felt like anyone truly saw you, so now you're doing everything in your power to become visible, even if it means becoming invisible to yourself. But here's the most painful truth. People don't fall in love with ghosts. They fall in love with presence, with intensity, with someone who knows their value and isn't afraid to walk away when it's not reciprocated. You're not that person right now. Not because you're weak, but because you were never taught how to value yourself without depending on someone else's approval. You learned that love has to be earned, that peace has to be performed, that being wanted means being perfect. And now you're exhausted, you're emotionally bankrupt, and still you're terrified of pulling back. Because you think the moment you stop giving, no one will stay. But let me ask you, what are they staying for now? The version of you that's always tired, always available, always pleasing? That's not connection. That's servitude. That's emotional slavery. You think you're invisible because you're not good enough, but the truth is darker. You're invisible because you've been trying too hard to be lovable and not enough to be whole. Jung believed that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. That's the journey you've been avoiding. You don't want to accept your anger, your bitterness, your unmet needs. You keep suppressing it all, smiling on the outside while you're bleeding inside. And it shows, it leaks out in your tone, in your posture, in your silence. And people, even unconsciously, feel that. They feel the desperation behind your generosity, and it makes them step back, not lean in. You want to be loved? Then stop begging for it with your silence. Stop leaking your dignity to buy attention. Start facing the part of you that's afraid to say, I deserve more than this, because until you do, you'll stay stuck in a cycle that has one rule. The more you give up yourself, the less they'll see you, and the less they see you, the more invisible you become. But what if that cycle could be broken? What if everything you believed about love was a lie? You keep giving everything, your time, your affection, your energy. And yet, they treat you like a background character in a story you're desperate to be part of. The truth is hard to accept, but you need to hear it. The more you chase love by sacrificing yourself, the more forgettable you become. They don't respect you because you don't respect yourself, and you don't even realize it's happening because you've confused being nice with being lovable. But kindness without self-respect isn't love. It's weakness in disguise. It's a silent scream that says, please don't leave me. I'll do anything to stay. And when people hear that, even subconsciously, they pull away. They don't lean in. They don't get closer. They get bored. They lose attraction. Why? Because humans don't crave what's available without effort. They don't desire what doesn't challenge them. They don't value what doesn't value itself. You show up. Every time you answer fast, you forgive easily, you never complain, you over-explain. You're the good one, the one they can vent to, lean on, ignore, and come back to without consequences. You're reliable, predictable, safe, and that's why they stop seeing you. You've trained people to treat you like an option by always making them a priority. And deep down you know it. You feel the sting every time they delay a reply, every time they cancel plans, every time they disappear without explanation. And still, you let them back in. No questions asked. You call it love. But Carl Jung would call it shadow behavior, a desperate attempt to control what you fear the most, rejection. What hurts the most isn't that they left. It's that you made it so easy for them to leave, that you didn't fight for yourself, that you swallowed your truth so they'd stay, that you let yourself become so soft, so agreeable, so damn digestible. They forgot you had edges. Let me ask you something you've probably never been asked. When was the last time you actually said what you needed out loud? When was the last time you demanded to be treated with the same care you give? You don't, because you're terrified that if you start making demands, they'll walk away. But here's the paradox. They're already walking. Not because you ask too much, but because you ask nothing. And no one can fall in love with someone who doesn't know how to be their own advocate. Respect isn't something you beg for. It's something you embody. But right now, you're embodying fear. You're moving like someone afraid to be seen, afraid to make noise, afraid to take up space, and people sense that. You might dress it up with smiles and politeness and emotional labor, but it shows in your eyes, in your energy, in the way you constantly anticipate what others need while ignoring what you're starving for. If this message spoke to something hidden inside you, take a second to tell us in the comments what part hit you the hardest. And if you're on a journey of healing, subscribe now, because this channel is here to walk with you. They don't see you because you've made yourself small. You walk into rooms scanning for approval, instead of walking in knowing you belong. You water yourself down, hoping to be digestible, and then you resent them for never tasting your full flavor. But how could they? You never gave them a chance to experience the real you. You gave them the mask, the soft, convenient version of you who never says no, who always says, I understand, even when it's killing you inside. And I get it. You think that being accommodating will make people stay, that if you just give them what they want, they'll finally see how valuable you are. But Carl Jung would tell you this: the soul doesn't grow by pleasing. It grows by becoming. And becoming requires confrontation. It requires drawing lines. It requires looking someone in the eye and saying, "This is who I am. This is what I deserve. And if you can't meet me here, you're not welcome in my life." But you don't do that. Not because you can't, but because you still believe love should never require force. That if it's real, it won't need boundaries. That the right person will just know. That they'll understand your silence. That they'll see your wounds and love you harder. That they'll notice your pain even when you pretend you're fine. Let me tell you something brutal but true. If you have to suffer in silence just to keep someone, you're not in a relationship. You're in an emotional prison. And you're the one holding the key. You're scared that speaking up will ruin everything. But what you're not seeing is that staying quiet is already ruining you. You're becoming bitter, resentful, hollow. You smile less. You sleep worse. You question your worth more and more each day, and the worst part, they don't even know, because you've made it your job to protect their comfort, even at the expense of your own sanity. This isn't love. This is a performance, and the curtain needs to fall. If you want to be noticed, stop disappearing. If you want to be valued, stop giving your worth away for free. If you want to be loved, stop settling for being used. The love you crave begins the moment you stop shrinking. So ask yourself this: what would happen if you stopped explaining? If you stopped chasing? If you stopped showing up for people who don't even wonder where you've gone? The answer is terrifying, and also your only way out, because until you stop trying to be lovable at any cost, you'll keep paying the price of being forgotten. And maybe, just maybe, that realization is the beginning of your liberation. Are you ready to face the addiction that's keeping you chained? You don't miss them. You miss the hit. That surge of dopamine when your phone lights up with their name. That wave of relief when they finally text back. That microsecond of belonging when they say something kind, even if it's followed by days of silence. You're not in love. You're in withdrawal. This is what emotional slavery really looks like. You're not holding on to a person. You're holding on to a high, to a feeling that once made you feel alive. And now you're chasing it like a drug. Except this one doesn't come in bottles or needles. It comes in "I miss you" texts, in half-hearted apologies, in breadcrumbs that feel like full meals because you've been starving so long. And here's the terrifying part. Your nervous system is so used to this chaos that peace feels boring. You've romanticized inconsistency. You've mistaken emotional whiplash for passion. And now if someone comes along who actually respects you, who actually cares, who actually stays, you push them away. Not because you don't want them, but because your body doesn't know how to exist without the adrenaline of being on edge. Carl Jung warned us about this. When you ignore your inner wounds, they don't disappear. They grow claws. They control your patterns, they dictate your desires, and most tragically, they convince you that pain is proof of love. Think about it. When someone treats you poorly, your instinct isn't to leave. It's to try harder, to prove your worth, to make them see. Why? Because somewhere deep in your past, love and approval were conditional. You learned that affection had to be earned, that your needs came second, that silence meant safety, that disappearing meant survival. So now, as an adult, you repeat the cycle. You cling to people who treat you like a backup plan. You chase validation from those who are emotionally unavailable, not because you want the suffering, but because it feels familiar. And the familiar always feels safe, even when it's killing you. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility, because no one else is going to break this cycle for you. You can't heal by hoping someone will finally love you the right way. You heal by recognizing that their attention is not your medicine, it's your addiction. Let's go deeper. Have you ever noticed how you behave when they pull away? How your thoughts spiral? How you refresh their messages over and over? How your entire mood crashes if they don't respond the way you hoped? That's not love. That's dependency. That's your body reacting to emotional scarcity like it's a threat to your survival. And it is, because for you, love isn't a choice. It's oxygen. And here's where the tragedy deepens. You've built your self-worth around how someone else feels about you. You don't know who you are without their opinion, without their approval, without their validation. You've outsourced your value, and now you're bankrupt every time they withdraw. Carl Jung would say this is your shadow, the part of you that feels unworthy, the part you've tried to hide behind niceness and patience and loyalty, the part that believes you're not enough unless someone confirms it for you. And until you face that shadow, you'll keep mistaking dependency for destiny. Let me be brutally clear, they are not your soulmate, they are your mirror, reflecting back all the places where you abandoned yourself, every time you silenced your needs, every time you tolerated disrespect, every time you chose to be chosen instead of choosing yourself. You're not in love with them. You're in love with the fantasy that they'll finally heal what someone else broke, but they can't, and they won't, because they are not your healer, they are your trigger. And until you stop confusing the two, you'll keep bleeding on people who didn't cut you. You think you need them. You don't. You need to sit with the version of you that thinks love only comes through sacrifice. You need to hold the hand of your inner child who was never taught what healthy affection looks like. You need to grieve the life you've lived, trying to earn love from people who were never capable of giving it. And that grief is uncomfortable. It's raw. It's lonely. But it's also your freedom, because on the other side of it is a version of you who no longer begs for scraps, who no longer accepts temporary comfort in exchange for permanent suffering, who no longer confuses being needed with being loved. So ask yourself, what would it mean to love without addiction, to connect without desperation, to give without expecting someone to save you in return? The answer won't come overnight, but it starts now, with the awareness that what you've been calling love is actually survival, that what you've been chasing is actually a fix, that what you've been settling for is actually the echo of an unhealed wound. And until you detox from this emotional dependency, you will keep choosing people who are poison dressed as pleasure. But the good news is this: addiction is not your identity. It's a pattern, and patterns can be broken, even this one. The reason people don't respect you is because you don't. It's not your words, it's not your looks, it's your energy. The way you show up, the way you shrink, the way you subconsciously apologize for taking up space. You may think you're being kind, generous, patient, but to the world, it reads as weakness, as desperation, as an unspoken plea, please don't leave me. And people can smell it. You see, people don't love you for how much you give. They love you for how much you value what you give. And you've been giving yourself away like you're worth nothing. You text first, you double text, you tolerate disrespect. You stay quiet when you should speak up. You laugh at jokes that hurt you. You wait by the phone. You forgive too fast. You give them everything, your time, your energy, your soul, hoping that one day they'll give you back the bare minimum. But they don't, because they don't have to. You've trained them not to. You've become so terrified of being alone that you'll accept being mistreated. You've confused being needed with being loved. And the worst part, deep down, you already know this. But admitting it would shatter your illusion of connection. So you pretend. You hope, you cling, you survive. Carl Jung believed that every person wears a mask, what he called the persona. It's who you become to be accepted, to be liked, to be loved. But the more you wear it, the more you lose touch with your real self. And the more you lose touch with your real self, the more others lose touch with your value. You become a projection of their desires, not a person. You mold, you bend, you soften, until nothing about you scares anyone anymore. But here's the truth. People don't respect what doesn't challenge them, and your need to be liked has made you harmless. People feel safe disrespecting you because you never call them out, because you always come back, because they know they can get away with it, and they do, over and over again. Do you know what happens when someone who values themselves is mistreated? They leave. No drama, no begging, just silence. And that silence is louder than any outburst. That silence commands respect because it says, I don't chase what hurts me. Yours says the opposite. You don't have to go through this alone. Share your story in the comments. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next step of this path. Let me be painfully clear. You don't lose people when you set boundaries. You lose people who only wanted you with none. And those aren't losses, they're revelations. But you've been so afraid of being left that you'd rather stay invisible than risk being alone. You've mistaken survival for love. And now you live on the emotional floor, hoping someone will finally see your worth, while stepping over you. They won't, because in their eyes, you're not a person. You're a comfort, a habit, a convenience. Someone to text when they're bored, someone to call when they need, someone to blame when they're angry, someone to ignore when they're done. And the reason they keep coming back is because you keep letting them. This isn't a relationship, it's a transaction. You give them your soul. They give you crumbs, you keep calling it love. They call it easy. Carl Jung would say you've been possessed by a complex, a self-destructive inner pattern shaped by childhood wounds, repeated until it becomes identity. And as long as you believe that being lovable means being available, you'll never be respected. So what happens when you finally stop? When you stop replying? When you stop explaining? When you stop proving your worth? When you stop begging to be seen? What happens is power. Real visceral magnetic power, not because you suddenly become cold, but because you return to yourself. People feel it, the shift, the silence, the space where your old desperation used to live. And some will panic, some will guilt trip you, some will get angry. But the ones who matter will finally meet the real you, not the echo of who you thought you had to be. Respect begins where fear of loss ends. But that requires grief. You will have to bury the version of you that made it everyone else's job to love you, to choose you, to validate you. You will have to say goodbye to the fantasy that if you give enough, they'll eventually give back. They won't, not because you're unworthy, but because your worth was never theirs to confirm. They can't give you what you already have unless you believe you don't. And that belief, that lie, that wound, that's what's driving your entire life. So here's the truth. No one will love you correctly until you stop loving yourself conditionally, until you stop choosing comfort over dignity, until you stop making excuses for disrespect just because you're afraid of silence. The silence won't kill you, but staying in these patterns will, because every time you accept less, you tell the world and yourself that you're worth less. And that becomes your reality. But it doesn't have to be. You can choose today to stop explaining your value and start embodying it. You can stop chasing closure and start giving yourself peace. You can stop waiting to be chosen and choose yourself so unapologetically that it shifts every relationship around you. Carl Jung believed that the process of individuation, becoming whole, requires confrontation. Not with others, but with yourself, with your shadow, with your fears, with the parts of you you've abandoned just to feel safe. And maybe now finally you're ready to stop being a mirror for others and become the light for yourself. Because the truth is, they were never the ones rejecting you. You were. And until that changes, nothing else will. But when it does, when you reclaim the love you've been outsourcing, something extraordinary happens. Not only do people start respecting you, they start fearing the day they lose you. What happens when you finally stop betraying yourself just to keep others around? What happens when you no longer beg to be seen, when you no longer shrink to be accepted? You become someone they can't manipulate anymore. Not because you became colder, but because you became whole. That's the part no one tells you, that healing doesn't make you more agreeable, it makes you more dangerous, because now you're no longer afraid to walk away. You're no longer starving for scraps of attention. You're no longer addicted to being needed, and that terrifies the ones who used to control you. When Carl Jung spoke of individuation, he wasn't talking about becoming perfect, he was talking about integration. Bringing together the abandoned, ashamed, broken parts of you and standing in them, owning them, loving them, living from them. You don't need to be more lovable. You need to be more you. That means loving without begging, giving without draining, being kind without being weak. That means saying no and meaning it, walking away and not looking back, setting a boundary and not needing to explain why. Because the most magnetic people in the world are not the ones who chase love. They're the ones who embody it. And when you become that kind of person, something shifts in the world around you. People listen more. They hesitate before hurting you. They come correct, or they don't come at all. You stop getting random attention and start getting aligned attention. The kind that matches your energy. The kind that doesn't feel like survival, because you're not trying to survive anymore. You're trying to live. It's strange at first. This power, this calm, this freedom. You'll miss the chaos. You'll feel lonely. You'll be tempted to go back, to prove you're still good enough, still kind, still lovable. But remember, the version of you they loved didn't love you. That version said yes when it meant no. That version accepted crumbs. That version kept quiet. That version tolerated pain just to feel less alone. That version is gone now, and maybe you're grieving it. That's okay. Grief means growth. It means your soul is finally catching up to the truth your heart already knew. You were never unlovable. You were just too scared to love yourself first. So what do you do now? You protect your energy. You get comfortable being alone. You treat your time like gold. You speak your truth even if your voice shakes. You stop trying to fix people who benefit from staying broken, and you stop proving your worth. Sometimes just writing it out is the first step toward release. So tell me, what did this video wake up inside you? Leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe if you're ready to keep growing one truth at a time. Because your worth doesn't need proof, it needs presence. And if someone can't meet you where you are, they can stay where they are. You're not their savior. You're not their supply. You're not their emotional punching bag. You're not their second option. You are a whole universe, and you don't need to shrink just so someone else can feel big. This isn't arrogance. It's clarity. It's alignment. It's freedom. And when people finally start loving you the way you deserve, it won't be because you changed who you are. It will be because you finally stopped hiding it. So breathe. You've made it this far. That means something inside you is still fighting, still hoping, still reaching for more. Don't give up now. Don't go back to what nearly killed your spirit just because it felt familiar. You didn't come this far to feel safe. You came this far to feel free. And if no one has told you this in a long time, let me say it now. You are not too much. You are not too broken. You are not unworthy. You were just taught to betray yourself to be loved. But that ends here. You get to choose yourself now, every day, every breath, every boundary. Because the moment you do, the world around you changes forever. Thank you for staying until the end. I know this wasn't easy to hear, but if it resonated with something deep inside you, it means you're already waking up, and I'm honored to be part of that moment with you. If you're ready to go even deeper, the next video is already on your screen. Click it now, and let's keep uncovering the parts of you the world tried to bury. You're not alone anymore, not now, not ever again.